For lesson 3, we're going to talk about using the selection tools. For this assignment, I'm going to walk you through an example, and then you're going to create one on your own. So you're going to have to find your own images and see what you can do with them, okay? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating an animal portrait. So let me switch over to Photoshop. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to open up 3 different images. You must have a background, you must have a body, and you must have an animal head. So a human body and an animal head. So I'm going to create a pig in space. So I'm going to come over here to open, and I'm going to find my 3 files that I'm going to work with. Again, you're going to have to find your own files. The best way of doing this is to go back to the welcome module and that helpful site and find 3 images. Do not just go and find images off of Google just because the resolution, you do not have as much control over it. Try and find as many off of the sites that I give you. Then if you want to pull some off of Google, you can choose them off Google, but you want to do them at least 1500 by 1500. Whenever you Google images, if you hover over them, they will have the little size on the bottom of them. So make sure they're at least big enough to do this with. Using those helpful sites, though, are going to give you better images and in the long run, better overall projects. Okay, so you're going to go find the 3 images wherever you save them to and hit open. Now with Photoshop, you're going to see that it opens all of your files. You can open multiple files at the same time. You could have 30 files open if you wanted to and get them all. They'll go across the screen right here, and then once you get past that point, then there'll be a little arrow here and a drop down, and you can find the images you want. This is really helpful because you don't have to keep like open one, close one, open one, close one. You can have them all open, and then you can even close them as you go. So once I move one image over, I'm going to close another image, okay? So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put the astronaut's body in. So this is my astronaut photograph, and I'm going to put it onto the moon. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to find this, and then you're going to use your selection tools. Now, this lesson is about using those selection tools and just playing with the different selection tools to find the ones that work best for you. So if we come up here to the marquee tools, you can see that a rectangle tool and ellipse tool are not going to work for what I need to do here. One thing I did want to point out that I didn't tell you during the last lesson, though, is if you're using like the rectangle tool and you click and drag with it, it's going to create rectangles. If you needed a perfect square, you just press and hold the shift key while you're doing it, and it'll give you that square. Another thing and the same thing works with the ellipse tool and circles. Another thing I did not mention is these little dots that you're going to see around your selection are called marching ants. So anytime I refer to marching ants, that's what I'm talking about, is the little bitty dots that are going around it. And if you're in closer, you can see they actually kind of look like they move. Okay, so they look like they're marching. So back to Control 0. Okay, so I know neither of my marquee tools are going to work for what I need to do. They might for you. The next set of tools down is the lasso tool, the polygon tool, and the magnetic tool. Okay, the lasso tool, this would take a really long time for me to make sure I get it perfect. The polygon tool, 2 straight lines. She's got a lot of curves and dents in her suit. And then the last one's magnetic tool. Now, I'm going to show you a little trick when you're using this magnetic tool, actually when you're using any of the selection tools. Okay, so let's say I'm going to just use the magnetic lasso as an example, and I'm going to click here, and I'm going to kind of follow the shape around. Now, I'm purposely not going around the flag so that I can show you something. So I get all the way around it, and then I'm going to make sure if I went, this is the whole selection I want, and I'm going to go back up to the start. So you can see my cursor is a little lasso with a little magnet on it. But if I go back to my very first anchor point, it has a little circle after it now. That means I've completed the circle or the shape. Okay, so now I have this. The problem is I really had wanted this flag to be in it as well. So I can grab one of my other selection tools or the same one, depending on what it was. I'm going to grab my lasso tool. I'm going to press and hold shift. And then I can draw around what I missed. Again, you just want to go around and make sure you complete the entire path around it. And there it is. Now, by holding shift, I can add to that. But up here, I have some black that I didn't want. So by pressing and holding Alt, I can take away from my selection. So now if this was what I wanted to copy over, I would have what I needed done, okay? But as you can see, that magnetic tool won't work perfectly on me because there's a little bit of clear here I'm going to have to pick up, and I don't want to have to go back and forth with the magnetic tool. Another thing with this magnetic tool, just to give you fair warning, I'm going to do Control D to deselect, is it can get a little crazy. And if you lose control of it, you can't go back. You can't undo it. You simply have to press escape. So with any of these selection tools, if you get out of control, you can't go back a step and like go back to the anchor point before it. You have to press escape and start all over. Okay, again, I'm going to do Control 0 and kind of zoom out. Actually, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so I can see it a little bit better. There you go. So Control plus to zoom in a little bit. Next one down we have is the object selection tool, the quick select tool, and the magic wand. If I did the magic wand and I clicked it on her suit, I could get most of the orange selected, but I wouldn't be able to necessarily get the black or any some of the other stuff without pressing the shift key and going back and forth and all of that. So I'm going to try the quick selection tool, and I'm going to just click on it and drag across it. Okay, now you can see I'm getting a few little areas that I don't necessarily want and not getting some areas that I do. But if I go over the areas that I do want, even if it didn't pick it up, I can go back and just kind of click on it and select it. Okay, now this is an AI tool, so it does get smarter as you keep going. So I'm going to press Alt now, and I'm going to drag around the bottom of this and get rid of some of this concrete. And then just kind of keep pressing Alt and going back and forth. And then I can press Shift and go back over the shoe. Now you can see it's reading the shoe better. Let's see. I want to pick up a little bit of this plastic right here. It didn't pick up. Suit. I don't want this area in here, but right now, if I was to do this area here and this area right here, my cursor is a little big. So I'm going to see if I can pick up as much of the big stuff as possible first. You can also see there's marching ants like around her, some of her patches. So I'm going to go over and do back over some of the patches. Oh, there's a little bit of extra concrete right here that I don't want. So I'm going to do that. Didn't get one of her fingers, but again, that's kind of small. So I'm going to change this first. And I don't want it to go right here on her neck. So I'm going to press Alt, kind of come down like this so that when I put the pig's head in there, because I'm going to have a pig in space. Okay, now come up here to the top. I'm going to down the size of my brush, and I'm going to do the same thing. Alt and get into the sky right here. Alt and get into the shadow between the bottom of her legs. And then I'm going to press Shift and get this little finger. And then it picked up a little extra, so Alt again and kind of go back. There we go. So I kind of got it right where I want it. Now, you can do a couple different things. Right now, it's pretty close to what I want it to look like. If I wanted to clean it up a little bit more, I can come up here to Select and Mask. And it's going to put me into what's called a masking mode. Now, with this though, you're going to have some different options. This area comes in really, really handy if you're doing things like hair or fur, because it'll give it a better, cleaner feel around it instead of if you just select it, it'll kind of sometimes give you that like witchy Christmas or Halloween tree feel, like real kind of sharp and weird. If you do it this way, you can get a cleaner edge to it. Okay, but that's further along in Photoshop than where we are at right now. So with this, what you can do is you can come in here and you can smooth out some of your edges. Sometimes your selections, depending on the tool, will get really hard. And you can be on any selection tool and come up here to this select and mask that was right up here in the top and be able to do this. Okay, so right here, we're going to go view. You can change the way you view it. This is all simply your preference. This one is called onion skin. So it kind of grays out anything you don't have selected. You have the marching ants. Sometimes if you're working on something that's really bright, these marching ants can be hard to see, so it doesn't always work the best. So you can change it. You have overlay, which does the red. You have on black, which turns the background darker, which if in this case it was already dark, so the whole thing's dark, you can't see it. On white, so it makes the background lighter. You have black on white. This one comes in really handy with hair, and then like here I can see that this pulled over here, so I can do Alt and click on it and get rid of that now that I see it. Same thing with her shoe down here. There we go. Or you can even do just on layers. So it kind of cuts out what you did and it shows. This is a good way of seeing what it's going to look like without officially like doing anything to it. Okay, so you pick whichever one works the best for you. I'm going to go back to the red kind of matches her suit. So I kind of like the on white for this one. Okay. Then down here, you can do, you can change things to color aware or object aware. You can mess with the radius. So you can push the edge just a little bit one way or the other. It doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but it will make a difference sometimes when you need that edge just to like, just slightly off. You can smooth your edges, you can feather them. So if you don't want it to feel completely like a sticker, you can feather that edge and make it a little bit softer. Now, if you're, say this background is blue and we were putting it onto another background that was close to that blue, you can feather it a little bit more and it smoothly transitions those into each other. You can do contrast, and then here's that edge, so you can shift it a little bit. So you can do all those. You can even clear your selection and start all over in here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK because it's pretty much where I want it to be. And it's going to put the marching ants around it. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out so I can see the whole thing. So Control-0. And all I'm going to do is do Control-C for copy. And I'm going to come back to my image. That's the planet. And I'm going to Control-V for paste. Now, I have it pasted on there. You can tell it's way too big. Do Control-T. And you can change it. Now, the nice thing about Photoshop is all you have to do is press the corners and you can kind of move things around and it will adjust it for you and keep the aspect ratio. Now, with some of the other programs, you have to press Shift. Now, if I don't want to keep the aspect ratio, which means I want to distort it, I want to stretch it or smush it or do that kind of stuff, then you just press Shift when you're doing it and you can make weird adjustments to this, okay? You don't have to keep it the exact same shape. So now I have my little suit. I'm going to hit the check mark. Now you can see that my suit seems to be a little bit brighter or a little less contrasty than my background. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab my burn tool. We talked about this a little bit with the tools. The burn tool will allow me to darken up some of the areas. So I'm going to come up here to my range and do shadows, and I'm going to leave it at 22%. And that's just going to make it feel a little bit more contrasty. If I draw over it, it's going to give my blacks a little bit blacker of a color. It feels like it fits a little bit better. You can also use the dodge tool, and you can see my light feels like it's coming from this side a little bit on here, which on the opposite, it feels a little backwards, but I can come in here and lighten it if I want the sun to feel more like it was coming from this direction. Okay, now let's do our pig head. So I'm going to come over here and here's my little piggy I found. If I do the quick select tool, I probably could get most of it in because the edges are pretty rough. If his head and his neck blend it more, it wouldn't work super well. You can do the object. I don't know if the object selection tool would work for that same reason. Magic Wand definitely won't. I'm going to go again with the quick selection tool, and then I'm going to come back with my lasso tools and clean up any mess that I have. So I'm going to kind of come around his face. And because we could see a little bit of her neck, I'm going to go down his neck a little ways. And then I'm going to show you how to kind of put them behind one another so that his neck makes sense, okay? Now, just because we select it this way doesn't mean we can't add to or erase once we get it moved over too, okay? So we can always change that. But I got around the ear, I got around the neck pretty well. I got a little extra up here on the head, so I'm going to subtract away from it. Remember, press Alt and kind of select away from it. Get a little bit more of his ear. And again, just for my own sanity, I'm going to come up here to select and mask and see exactly what I have. This time that white kind of blends too much with the background, so I'm going to go a little bit darker so that he pops out. And you can see pretty good. I don't have anything weird sticking out. If I wanted to get a little bit more with his hair, I could mess with my smart radius right here and go over it, and it'll give it a better definition. But I think he's pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And do Control C. And again, go back to my planet and do Control V. And this time I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you guys can see what I'm doing a little bit better. You can see by zooming into 200%, it's becoming a little bit more pixelated. That's okay. It's actually not going to be that pixelated. It just looks that way for now. Okay, and if I wanted his neck to kind of fit in here, do this. Now his head's really straight up and down, and I want him to tilt his head just slightly. So I'm just going to come down to the corner. You'll see my cursor changes to like a curved arrow. I can bring it down like this and make it fit a little bit better. Okay, and then I'll hit the enter on my keyboard to make it set. Now, one of the things I said was when I cut out the suit, this is the neck piece that came up on her suit, and I wanted him to kind of fit a little bit better into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag layer 2. I'm going to click on it and drag it down behind layer 1. And then I can make adjustments to it if I want it to make it fit into that neck piece. But with him, I liked it a little bit better, kind of fitting the suit a little bit more. So I'm going to pull that layer 1 back down and have layer 2 on the top and just kind of set him down in here. Now, if I wanted it to round with this shape a little bit more, I can simply take my layer 2 and I can fade it out a little bit so I can see that background a little bit more. I could pull him down in here and use my eraser tool. Oops, I'm going to make it a lot smaller than what it is right now. And I can kind of erase parts of it so that it fits better down into there. And then I just push my opacity back up. So his head fits down in there pretty well. Now, again, he feels a lot like flatter, less contrasty. So as long as I'm on my layer 2, I can come over to my burn tool. I can down the size of it a little bit. I'm going to burn his neck in a little bit so it looks like it's going down into the suit. It's giving it a little bit more of a shadow. Burn his ears in a little bit more to give it a little bit more contrast. And I'm going to come back down to my layer 1 and I'm going to burn this collar in just a little bit more so they kind of match a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go back and forth until I get it the way I want it. Do Control 0. So now I have a pig standing on the moon. The other thing I want you to do after you get these things added in is I want you to actually crop it down. So you're going to come up, grab your crop tool. We're going to crop it to an 8.5 by 11 again. So you're going to find the 8.5 by 11 in here. We're going to, depending on your image, whether it's vertical or horizontal, portrait or landscape mode is completely up to you. Remember, if you need to change it to the opposite, it goes right here. We're going to move it to where we want it. If you need to do any straightening to it, you're going to do that right here. If you want to bring it in a little bit closer, it still will be an 8.5 by 11, but you can crop in a little bit tighter. And then you're going to hit the check mark. Let me Control Z or Control O out. And there he is. So again, you need to have a background, you need to have a human body, and you need to have a head. And these should be fun. Don't take it too seriously, just to kind of enjoy it. Also, one thing I didn't do, if I want to come over here to my background, I can unlock it. Now I can work on the background too. I can take that burn tool and make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to burn a kind of a drop shadow back here. So it looks like the feet. Kind of go around the feet. That way it looks like the feet are a little bit more on the moon themselves. Okay? Play with this, enjoy it, make something silly. It's completely okay. Remember, you go up to File and save it as a PSD file. Then you're going to come over here to these little lines on the layers, flatten the image, and save it as a JPEG. And that JPEG is what you're going to turn into me. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Find your own images, have a good time with this, and I look forward to seeing what you create.